Dr. Andrew Abella is with us. He is the Dean of the School of Business and Economics at Catholic University of America. He's the co-author of the book Catechism for Business, which I'm holding up here in my hand, edited by Andrew Abella and Joseph Capizzi. And Dr. Abella, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Tom. It's great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Hobby Lobby yesterday went before the Supreme Court, and interestingly, there are now 6 Catholics on the Supreme Court, something I don't think happened at all during the first 2 centuries of our republic. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, John Kennedy kind of broke the Catholic barrier.
Yeah.
But I'm curious your thoughts on that piece of this issue, particularly given that both Breyer and Scalia yesterday seemed to assert that Plan B and some of these 4 forms of birth control that are objected to by Hobby Lobby were referred to as abortifacients, when in fact the science now is pretty conclusive since 2007. When these were first rolled out, the assumption was that they prevented a fertilized egg from implanting in the uterus. Now it turns out that may be true of RU-486. In fact, RU-486 could even arguably induce a chemical abortion. But that all of these drugs prevent fertilization in the first place by increasing the vaginal mucus, or not, the mucosal, thickening the mucosal lining of the fallopian tubes, or by creating an environment, for example, the IUD, that is chemically hostile to fertilization. Does that change the Catholic argument? Because there's no fertilized egg involved with any of these forms of birth control.
It doesn't, not to Catholics, because we are opposed both to abortion and to contraception. So from that perspective, it doesn't make a difference.
So Catholics are equally opposed to condoms?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, but the members of the Supreme Court, whether they're Catholic or not, I suppose, seemed to think, and in fact said right out loud a couple of times, that these were abortifacient drugs when in fact they're not. Does that concern you?
I'm not an expert in that area. My interest in the case in particular is how we understand a corporation. When I read the government's brief, I got the sense that they were very much arguing the old line that I don't agree with, that the purpose of a corporation is simply to maximize the profits. And that's certainly not the Catholic.
That was the Michigan Supreme Court's ruling in Dodge v. Ford back in the 19-teens.
Well, you can debate exactly what their legal obligation is.
Sure.
But the purpose of a firm is to do some good for somebody, right? And if you manage it that way, then you tend to prosper.
Right.
If you manage the firm in terms of trying to make as much money as you can, then you get corporate scandal, 2008, and so on.
I absolutely agree with you. I wrote a book about this called Unequal Protection.
I'm familiar with your book.
Oh,
yes.
Thank you. And in my research for that book, one of the things I discovered was that from the founding of our republic, the very earliest corporate forms, which really started to take hold in the 1820s, 1830s, until 1895, in every state in the Union, the state laws that had to do with incorporating, they're called charter laws, the state corporate charter laws, required every corporation to have as their first statement of mission or purpose to benefit the citizens of the state in which they were incorporated. And then everything else, and then the secondary purpose would be to build railroad cars or make matchsticks or something like that.
Right.
And when John Rockefeller was being prosecuted in 1892 by the state of Ohio for violating their antitrust laws with the Standard Oil Trust, he basically said to all the corporations in the country, if anybody will change their corporate charter laws so that what I'm doing will be legal in your state, I will move to your state. And it kicked off a 6-year era that's referred to in the history books as the chartermongering era, when every state in the Union, ultimately, it took until the 1920s before the final ones did, but all the East Coast states immediately, a huge competition was set up between Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut. And Delaware won that with the least restrictive corporate laws. You can incorporate a corporation with a single sentence that says the purpose of this corporation is to do whatever is legal in the state of Delaware. But New Jersey got John Rockefeller's business. But in every case, that requirement, and like I said, it took until the 1920s, but in every case, in every state in the union, that requirement that the first sentence of a corporate charter be this corporation is incorporated to serve the citizens of the public of the state has been removed. Do you think we should put it back?
Well, I'm not sure the answer is in legislation, but the intent. I think you see a number of companies moving in that direction anyway, and it seems to work because people would rather do business with a company that seemed to be wanting to do good for somebody rather than somebody who's trying to make as much money off you as possible. There's this whole movement called conscious capitalism where a number of companies are sort of trying to run themselves that way, whether they be private or not. And this is very much in line with what we cover in the book, in the Catechism for Business, very much in line with certainly what the Catholic Church has taught about business, which we think is generally applicable to everybody. It's if you want to be successful and happy in a business career, it turns out, and this is not just pious thinking, this is just from kind of observation, empirical study, it turns out that being decent to your employees, being decent to your customers, and so on, seems to be the best strategy.
Yeah. You also, in page 134, in message from Pope Paul the Sixth, the question is asked: news media, should it favor products or viewpoints over one or another? And the quote the Pope is saying, "Upright and honorable methods employed sincerely for the purpose of studying the truth and relief and making it comprehensible are not to be confused with those processes and techniques which, under the pretense of neutrality and independence, actually set themselves to manipulate the facts and thereby to manipulate also the audience to which they are presented. For practices of this nature, there can be no commendation." Were you referring to a network that calls itself Fair and Balanced?
He's writing this back in the 1960s, 75, right?
I see.
World Communications Days when he's writing this, but he's making the point that the purpose of a news network, the purpose of journalism, is to share what is the truth as best they can get to it, right? And not under the pretense of that to be pushing one partisan view or another. And I think we can agree that there are guilty parties kind of across the spectrum on this one.
Sure. I'm upfront about it. I don't pretend that my show is a news show. It's a commentary show. But what concerns me is that there are so many news shows that have so much commentary embedded in them that they really shouldn't call themselves news.
It's better to be upfront, as you say, and just say that you're commenting.
I think so.
Yeah.
So you've got, this is a remarkable book, A Catechism for Business, Tough Ethical Questions and Insights from Catholic Teaching, edited by Andrew Abella and Joseph Capizzi. And Dr. Abella, I think you've done a marvelous job of pulling together a lot of the very best of centuries, well, mostly recent years, but of the Catholic Church, of the writings of the Catholic Church. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you, Tom.
And thank you for being on our program. We will be back. Your thoughts on what happened before the Supreme Court yesterday. As I said, I'm very concerned about the fact that nobody challenged Scalia or anybody about this whole abortifacient thing.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
What it says to me is that a very, very slippery slope is going to be on the backside of this door that's going to get opened, to mix and mangle metaphors.